Yeah, so we're reading Are We Having Sex Now or What by Greta Christina. And this is in the Philosophy of Sex Contemporary Readings, one of the editions. But like, yeah, so here we go. And as always, feel free to ask me questions along the way. This is my first time reading it or evaluating it. I'm not endorsing it. Thank you for suspending me, all the services, for thinking I endorse everything I read. I do not. Okay, so let's see. What is this fucking... Okay, this is about Greta Christina. I don't care about that. Let's just get into it. And yeah, as always, feel free to ask questions. And is my first time reading it. And here we go. When I first started having sex with other people, I used to like to count them. I wanted to keep track of how many there had been. It was a source of some kind of pride or identity anyway, to know how many people I'd had sex with in my lifetime. So in my mind, Len was number 1, Chris was number 2, that slimy, awful little heavy metal barbiturate addict whose name I can't remember was number 3, Alan was number 4, and so on. It got to the point where I'd start having sex with a new person for the first time. When he first entered my body, I was only having sex with men at the time. What would flash through my head wouldn't be, oh baby, you feel so good inside me, or what the hell am I doing with this creep, or this is boring, I wonder what's on TV. What flashed through my head was 7. That's funny. It's like, yeah, see, this is one of, we talk about CT Nguyen here every so often. He calls it value capture, where you start gamifying your world and then you start putting measures on everything that you shouldn't be doing. And so this is a good example of when you're putting a measure on something and you lose the actual benefit of the thing you're doing for the measure, which is just the count of how many people you've slept with. So yeah, doing this had some interesting results. I'd look for patterns in the numbers. I had a theory for a while that every 4th lover turned out to be really great in bed and would ponder what the cosmic significance of the phenomenon might be. Sometimes I try to determine what kind of person I was by how many people I've had sex with. At 18, I'd had sex with 10 different people. Did that make me normal, repressed, a total slut, a free-spirited bohemian, or what? Not that I compared my numbers with anyone else's, I didn't. It was my own exclusive structure, a game I played in the privacy of my own head. Then the numbers started getting a little larger, as numbers tend to do, and keeping track became more difficult. I remember that the last one was 17, and so this one must be 18, and then I'd start having doubts about whether I'd been keeping score accurately. I'd lie awake at night thinking to myself, well, there was Brad, and there was that guy on my birthday, and there was David. No, wait, I forgot that guy I got drunk with at the social my first week at college, so that's 7, 8, 9, and by 2 in the morning I'd finally have it figured out. But there was always a nagging suspicion that maybe I'd missed someone, some dreadfully tacky little scumball that I was trying to forget. See, I don't use scumball. I don't know what that is. I'd say scumbag. This is just not me, where I'm from. But a scumball, okay, that I was trying to forget about having invited inside my body. And as much as I maybe wanted to forget about that sleazy little scumball, I wanted more to get that number right. Okay. It kept getting harder, though. I began to question what counted as sex and what didn't. There was that time with Jean, for instance. I was pissed off at my boyfriend David for cheating on me. It was a major crisis, and Jean and I were friends, and he'd been trying to get at me for weeks, and I hadn't exactly been discouraging him. I went to see him that night to gripe about David. He was very sympathetic, and of course, he gave me a back rub, and we talked and touched and confided and hugged, and then we started kissing, and then we snuggled up a little closer, and then we started fondling each other, you know, and then all heck broke loose, and we rolled around on the bed groping and rubbing and grabbing and smooching and pushing and pressing and squeezing. He never did actually get it in. Poor Jean. He wanted to, and I wanted to too, but I had this thing about being faithful to my boyfriend, so I kept saying, no, you can't do that. Yes, that feels good. No, wait, that's too much. Yes, don't stop. No, stop, that's enough. Okay, and see, the other thing that happens on my stream is that people get me to read things that they think would be funny for me to read, and so that may also be one of these things. We never even got our clothes off. Jesus Christ, though, it was some night. One of the best, really. But for a long time, I didn't count as one of the times I'd had sex. He never got inside, so it didn't count. Later, months and years later, when I lay awake putting my list together, I'd start to wonder, why doesn't Jean count? Does he not count because he never got inside, or does he not count because I had to preserve my moral edge over David, my status as the patient, ever faithful, cheated on, martyred girlfriend, and if what I did with Jean counts, then I don't get to feel wounded and superior. Yeah, you want that moral high ground. That's worth a lot to people. So yeah. Aris says he likes this essay. I'm just curious how I'll respond. I mean, so far, I will say it's well written, and I feel like I'm getting set up. I've read enough philosophy, hell, on fucking stream, and besides that, to know when I'm getting set up for something. And this person is already way too competent with both the sort of like philosophical shaping of where this is going and their straight up writing skill to like they're too competent. And so I feel like I'm being set up for something, and like there's going to be a hammer dropped. Like this is just how these things go. And I mean, you can see that right here just in their writing. Years later, I did end up fucking Jean. Like, so after all of this like setup, I mean, I'm just talking about writing here. Like this, all of this here, all the way down to here, and then years later, I did end up fucking Jean. So it's like, they know how to set stuff up. Years later, I did end up fucking Jean, and I felt a profound relief because at last, he definitely had a number, and I knew for sure that he did in fact count. And you see how weird this is, that a person counted because he had a number because of some weird measure that she had put on what counts as sex and what does not. And so you can see that this is what I mean. The fact that this person has a numerical measure of some sort of experiential thing is a problem of philosophy. Like, this is basically the problem of induction when it comes to sex. What actually counts as in the group versus out of the group. Like how many crows are black here. That's exactly what's going on. And K-Pars, yes, biopower. If you want to go what counts as like a political biological interaction. Yeah, it turns it all into numbers and data. So exactly, you're reducing human life, that the bio and power, to some sort of numbers. But like that's the political term for it. But you can just do this in straight inductive terms, like in terms of philosophy of science. What counts as in the graph and what does not? What counts as out of the graph? What counts for your induction? What does not count for your induction? So there's the problem of induction and what counts as good data. Okay. You will become data and you will like it. I am not going to assimilate into data. Like, it is not, we're not the Borg here. Okay. Then the author continues, and I started having sex with women, and boy, how did that ever shoot holes in the system. Yeah. I always made my list of sex partners by defining sex as penile vaginal intercourse, you know. Ivan, welcome in, Ivan. And boy, did you come at a great time. We are talking about, are we having sex now or what? This is a philosophy of sex topic, so all the kids get out. And we were just talking about induction, because the author here is talking, what's up Globus, what's up Ivan? We were talking about what counts as actual sex, and I was saying, this is actually a problem of induction. What are you counting as good data? Why don't I have a GRE? Do I need one? Like, yeah, what's up, Dojo? How you doing? So, yeah, no GRE. Some people call me that. That's not actually what the name is, like, comes out of, actually, but, like, why not? And GRE is kind of terrible, I know. So, like, pronounce it Noger, Nogre, Nogreo. I don't care. My name is Noah. So, yeah. So, no GRE equals 0, exactly. So, yeah. So, okay. Yeah, inducing sex. Yeah. So the question is, how do you actually measure sex? Like, so there's a measurement problem here too. So that's what we're talking about. Anyway, thank you for doing the shout out, whatever mod did that. But yeah, welcome in. How's your stream? Of course, as always, if you need to raid and run or you need to go get yourself like snack, food, bathroom, please do that, Ivan. I appreciate your raid. But hi, anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Noah, no Gray, no Grayo, or no GRE. I don't actually care what you call me as long as you're not a jerk about it. Someone does call me no GRE. Professor Ashley calls me no GRE. Yeah, and Killabonks. Yeah, bonk, everyone. I'm a philosopher, and we usually chat some philosophy, and then we read some published philosophy usually and discuss it and try to figure out what is going on. And if you stick around, we have a rating system which goes up on our website, so we rate stuff. Ara says, right, if you're going to philosophize about sex, you're implying that you know the proper target of the philosophical curiosity is. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this person has been like, yeah, I have had lots and lots of sex. Like, they were like, I've been counting, and then like I had other sex with other people. So they've had enough sex that they're like, I know at least somewhat about this. But yeah. Please submit your form of triplicate. Globus says you should wish to engage in intercourse. Yeah. So this is part of the, like, does it count unless you have the form signed properly? I don't know. It's like, yeah. So, like, but this is a question. This is an ontological question. What counts as intercourse? I mean, that I didn't realize it. Like, that is very much what the title says. But, like, you know, when it comes to sex and philosophy, it's hard to judge what people are going by. Yeah, exactly. They, like, I'm an expert. I mean, they're just saying they're experienced enough to have some opinion on the matter. But, yeah. Anamnesis, yes. Favorite sex act. So yeah, exactly when you came in, this author was saying like the number of guys she had counted, and then she continues. Then I started having sex with women, and oh, and boy, howdy, did that ever shoot holes in the system, because she was only counting insertion of penis into vagina as an official sex act. Nothing else counted. So once you start having sex with people who don't have penises, then how do you count that? It's hard. Well, it's more complicated then. Yeah. So penile vaginal intercourse, you know, screwing. And see, and I was also commenting, this person knows how to write. So they go from the very, very technical right here, like this very technical sort of sounding thing, to, you know, screwing. Yeah. It's a pretty simple distinction, a straightforward binary system. Did it go in or didn't it? Yes or no, 1 or 0, on or off. Granted, it's a pretty arbitrary definition, but it's the customary one with an ancient and respected tradition behind it, and when I was just screwing men, there was no compelling reason to question it. Exactly, Raymond. When we start counting weird fetishes, everything goes to hell. Yeah, so if you're going to start saying what counts as like sex and intimacy, well, that the intimacy and sex, like it can get much wider than just sex or just the intercourse. So there's a lot of stuff that can go on. Okay. But with women, well, first of all, there's no penis. Yeah. So I commented on that. See, I'm smart. So right from the start, the tracking system is defective. And then there are so many ways women can have sex with each other, touching and licking and grinding and fingering and fisting with dildos or vibrators or vegetables or whatever happens to be lying around the house, or with nothing at all except human bodies. Of course, that's true for sex between women and men as well. But between women, no one method has a centuries-old tradition of being the one that counts. Even when we do fuck each other, there's no dick, so you don't get that feeling of this is what's important, we are now having sex, objectively speaking, and all that other stuff is just foreplay or afterplay. So when I started having sex with women, the binary system had to go in favor of a more inclusive definition. Sockdown says, yeah, feel free to save that link I sent. Just can't wait to get started. I know it's just like LinkedIn, but I am glad to get support and notations from you guys and vice versa. Oh, so this is your spot. Okay, cool. Cool, Sockdown. Very cool. Yeah, so let me go take a look real fast. I'll put it up. Save it here. Aha! There you are. You have a picture. Very good. It's fun. Okay, thank you, Sock now. Yeah, so basically, as soon as you get past the most vanilla basic thing, you're going to need a more inclusive definition. And this is what happens in philosophy. You have edge cases, and then all of a sudden you have to change your definition because the edge cases are going to screw with everything. Doger says, if we weigh heavily risk of pregnancy, the penis and vagina should be given extra weight. Yes, but that's the question. Are you having sex, like, all right, so gay sex between men? Then you're still doing penis insertion quite often, but, like, you would not be at risk of pregnancy. So you'd still be penis insertion into something, but, like, there is no pregnancy. So, again, it's like, if you start saying pregnancy is the goal here, you're going to miss out on... I mean, that's not a trivial amount of people that have, like, homosexual sex between men. And so it's like, this isn't, like, there's a lot of that. And so if you're going to say that's not like the right kind of sex, it seems like it's not taking into account the phenomena that is going on here. Yeah, exactly. Edge cases, Ivan. Raymond says, does the fetish where they like to be closed spaces count? Like the video of the woman inside cage who can only fit up when stood up, and they put her in a hole, same size floor, and a rug between armchair and on top of it. So, I mean, this is not my area. Like I said, I do like the weird esoteric philosophy. I'm like concerned about metaphysics and logics and stuff, like non-classical logics. So, like, this is not my area. So you should really go back, bother Aris. Like he said, he is teaching a class on this stuff, so he knows way more about it than I do. But I would be like, yes, it can be. Like, if you are getting some sort of like sexual arousal out of this stuff, then you are going to be at least on the range of having sex. If you are getting a sexual arousal out of being trapped in a box or whatever it is. So, like, sure. Who am I to say that they're, like, I'm not going to yuck their yum. And if that is their yum, then it's sex for them. Yes, Latvian Jesus, exactly. If you are getting erotic pleasure out of it, then I'm going to count it as erotic for you, and unless there's some reason to say you are a defective human being, which I don't think there is most of the time, then it's going to count, at least for you, like in some small part of like the human experience, as sexual. So, sure. Like, who am I to speak on like the vast range of things people do for pleasure? Like, I'm only one man here. I always like the, what's it called? Hellraiser. It's like the people who are really into pain and like dealing with demons, and they think that's cool. They like that. Why not? Ivan says, question, is this word essentialism? Just because we can often classify acts as sex doesn't mean there is a single concept that has a closed form definition. The brain is tracking statistical groupings, the boundaries of which would be subjective. So this is more like an ontological question, philosophy of language question, Ivan. I mean, I try not to be too gatekeepy about these things, but yeah, most of the time, like if you want to, like there's three theories actually. There's the sort of one that you're dealing with, the statistical groupings. We are in some sense experts at applying ideas that we understand the correct application for their usage. We have used them in the past. We understand what experts mean by them, like the general usage, like the definition usage, the like according to a dictionary, the expert usage, like what an expert in the field would say and how they use it, and we could be like, you know, replicating that. There's also the causal history, like so when I call this a pencil, it's because someone in the past called it a pencil, and that history actually is what's more important, and that's why I call this a pencil, because there's a long history that this is the word that gets used. And then the last definition is a weird one. It's that we just sort of glom onto things, like, and it's kind of like magnetism. We just sort of understand, and this is how our brain works, and this is the essentialism. Maybe what you're trying to get at with your question is that this thing's a pencil, essentially so, and we understand something of that essentialism, and that's how we connect up the word pencil with this object, because this object is essentially a pencil, and that's what our brain does, is it connects the object to like the name via this essential connection. So there's different ways philosophers have done this. They get strange, and I mean these things get really fucking strange. I think a lot of people nowadays like the history one. They go back to the causal history because there's some technical problems with the expert analysis. That was the older thing. It goes back to Russell on Frege, I think. But the Saul Kripke did the historical analysis where you where something gets baptized as a certain name. Like, so this is a pencil, this is my water cup. So like, where did cup come from, and how do I know it's a water cup? Well, we started calling this cup at a certain point way back whenever we had to, and that history is what like I'm keying in on when I talk about cups. Like even when I learned the word cup. So yeah, but like it gets like, these are the three, like this is the shape of the discussion, and you can look into the different ways, like the different benefits of these different theories. Like you might think the magnetism, where we're glomming onto the essential character of the object to figure out how the name gets applied to it, you might think that's insane. I think that is insane. There's really good reasons why people say insane things, because it makes all their other theories work out great, and that's why people do this shit. Because it just sort of like works with everything else. And so like you might find yourself in the position where you need that theory because everything else just becomes happy if you have it. So it happens a lot. But yeah. But then there are puns and double entendres meant to fuck up that relation to history. Yes, exactly. But that's why they're puns and double entendres. Yeah, so like that would explain what is going wrong here, is that you think you have one history and then you're switching to another one. It's like, yeah, you purposely misuse people's penchant to attach certain histories to words and then use it in a different way. The history doesn't create the essentialism though. No, the idea of the history is that it goes back to a baptism. So someone had to name something at a time. So, this is a U.S. quarter. Like, why is this called a quarter? Well, it's a quarter of $1. But like, there's a history there of like, what is $1? Why is this a quarter of it? Like 1/4. And so you can look at the history, but like that goes back to the baptism of it. Now, the baptism isn't keying on to anything essential. It's just what somebody called it back in the day. That's it. But like, that is what we have. We have this history that goes back to these instances of baptism. Yeah. So, like, yeah, like maybe that's not the answer you were expecting. Like, ask me like if I got something wrong, Ivan, or anyone else. But like, you see, these are like, we're talking about what counts as sex, and like even here, it's like, well, does like male penis vaginal intercourse, like that's what you're defining it as? Well, that's more of an expert definition here. Like, or then she was saying it was also, yeah, and what you were probably getting at as well, she was using it as an essential thing in sex. But again, like, what exactly, where did that come from? So, yeah. Okay. I think I finally got to the answer at the end of that. Okay. So she needs a more inclusive definition when she's having sex with women, because she had using this sort of either expert definition of what she thought was the expert way of defining sex or an essentialist way of doing it. Which meant, of course, that my list now of how many people I had sex with was completely trashed. In order to maintain it, I would have to go back and reconstruct the whole thing and include all those people I'd necked with and gone down on and dry humped and play touchy-feely games with. Even the question of who filled the all-important number 1 slot, something I'd never had any doubts about before, would have to be reevaluated. By this time, I'd kind of lost interest in the list anyway. Reconstructing it would be more trouble than it was worth. But the crucial question remained: what counts as having sex with someone? So yeah, so now we are finally getting to the main point of the paper. So we are halfway through, but you can see what this author has done is she has gotten all these examples in that, like building in all these examples to say what the problem is, to get it a bit more sophisticated. Dozier says in this instance is that which has certain sex is that which has certain properties, like the physical touch intended to help achieve orgasm. Well, that might be where she's going. I suspect not, because what she just said here, like just in this previous paragraph, like this dry hump and play touchy-feely with, this may not have been intended to get to orgasm. So you might get very close, but would that be sex if like you stop? Like, so you don't intend to have orgasm, you intend to edge yourself to get very close to it. Most people would say, like, if you were like edging with somebody, like you're getting very close to orgasm and not doing it, they might say, well, that counts. So it's like, it's real hard. Look how fucked up in lowercase queer all this all is. Well, I mean, what is fucked up about this Latvian Jesus? I'm not sure. It is kind of queer gay. Like, it is queer unusual. I don't know if this is queer unusual. Like lowercase queer, like unusual. I don't see what is very unusual about this. This person has sex. Okay. Person has sex with multiple people. Okay, that's not unusual. And so now they're trying to make a definition. And if you're worried about making definitions, that philosophy is a weird subject, but like I don't see what the what is fucked up about this. Ivan says, say we use 3 primary criteria and 7 minor criteria and weigh them subjectively to decide whether something is sex. Seems like we could statistically map the rules we use. It's not philosophy, it's psychology. Yeah, so you can make up rules. Will they cover all edge cases? I don't know. But like, yeah, of course you can get close and you can do science on it. But like, if you're talking philosophy, you don't get to throw out the edge cases. Like in science, you get to say we're not talking about that stuff right now. We're going to talk about these general things which we all agree are sex, and we're going to toss out everything else. But in philosophy, you don't get that leeway, or you can, but you have to be super clear about it. So it's like, I don't know, like depends what your goal is here. In philosophy, like he's just trying to define it at this point, not come up with like 7 criteria or whatever. Whether you achieve orgasm doesn't matter though. Yes, but my point is, Dojo, couldn't you have sex where the point was never to reach orgasm, just get very close? And that seems like you would still be like, say you were doing that with someone who is not your partner. That would still seem like cheating, that you're getting extremely close to orgasm with another person, like if you were violating their trust. So it seems weird. Yeah. They call it gooning Norman Finkelstein. Yes, exactly. I'm trying to take away the examples is meant to show this one wicked nebulous thing and try and crystallize. That's fair. But again, this is philosophy. This happens all the time. Like, this is not unusual philosophy, an unusual philosophy sort of question asking, what is a thing? That is a metaphysical question, happened for thousands of years. What is this thing? Vipers asks, if ejaculating in his rectum counts as sex, is sucking it back out double sex? No, you're undoing it. It's like taking the venom out of the organism, so you're undoing the sting, I would assume. So you can undo it by sucking it out. Okay, so Ivan agrees it's not fundamental or close form. It seems that there's not much progress can be made. Well, that's why we read this paper, to see where the author is going to go with it. Maybe they're very clever. Maybe they're smarter than us. They probably are smarter than us, at least in this area. They know more stuff, and so maybe we will get somewhere. I hope. Sockness is what I hear in this is that people have a sliding scale marker for identifying sex. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I mean, again, we're waiting to see what this author can make of the subject. Yeah. That's great news. Yeah, I know, isn't it? You're using fucked up to mean nebulous. Yeah, see, Latvian, you just got to be careful when you talk about sex and fucked up. It's like people can get, it can be taken the wrong way. But yeah. What is a thing but the complement of the set of things it isn't? Yeah, so again, you can have like paradoxical shit, like Russell's paradox, like the set of all things that are not in the set. But like, yeah, so it's hard. Is this an XY problem? Is she trying to define sex or cheating? We don't know yet. I think she's just asking the more philosophical question, what is the thing that we call sex? So I think it's not trying to define cheating. I mean, that usually has to do with like violating someone's trust. But like, yeah, Ivan, thank you for, is that a you've gigantified Russell. Thank you for the gigantified emote. Appreciate it. Yeah. Okay. So what counts as having sex with someone? And I don't think it's in the count of cheating. I think this is just purely philosophical. What is this thing and what counts? Yeah, so like I said, this could be called biopower, as K-Power has mentioned. What counts is like, what can you actually measure? And it could also be just a simple question of metaphysics. What is this thing? It also could be a question of science. How do we measure it? Vipers, I got a lot of that. She was like, yeah, I fucked so many people. It's great. You get that out of this a little bit. Okay. It was important for the author to know. You have to know what qualifies as sex, because when you have sex with someone, your relationship changes, right? Right? It's not that sex itself has to change things all that much, but knowing you've had sex, being conscious of a sexual connection, standing around making polite conversation with someone while thinking to yourself, I've had sex with this person, that's what changes things. Or so I believed. And if having sex with a friend can confuse or change the relationship, think how bizarre things can get when you're not sure whether you've had sex with them. Yeah, so this is talking about all the other things that can go on with human relationships. And, it's like, yeah. So this is a thing. If you're a rigger and tie others where you are participant, I mean, again, are you getting any sexual pleasure from it, or are you just like a hired hand on a, on like, say, a porno set? Probably not. I mean, there's like a lot of people, like, filming takes a lot of effort, and like making good movies take a lot of effort. And so if you're making a porno thing, you probably did not have sex if you're just like, holding a mic or tying someone up as part of a scene. Like, you probably don't count. Like, it's just part of your job and you're not thinking of it that way. Granted, that might not satisfy someone who thinks of it as sex, like anything participating, but like I wouldn't. I mean, if that's part of your job, like you just work in like a sex dungeon and you have to tie people up as your job, you probably aren't getting any sexual pleasure out of it. Schrodinger, both have and haven't. Yeah, Schrodinger's virgin. Ivan says, is it physically intimate? Does that lead to reproduction? Would your monogamous partner be upset? Yeah, that's the real question, I think. Would someone be upset about it? Then that's like the real question here, because you're violating trust, and that's usually taken as fundamental in ethics. Is it intimate without physical intimacy? Does it cause orgasm? Yeah, so these are good questions. We're going to get there, I suspect. All right. The problem was, the author says, as I kept doing more kinds of sexual things, the line between sex and not sex kept getting more hazy and indistinct. As I brought more into my sexual experience, things were showing up on the dividing line demanding my attention. It wasn't just that the territory I labeled sex was expanding, and this is what I meant when I was saying induction, what counts as phenomena or not. We're actually getting the measurement problems here. The line itself had swollen, dilated, been transformed into a vast gray region. It had become less like a border and more like a demilitarized zone. Yeah, and so here we have the legit problem of measurement in like the analysis of sex. Like, that's exactly the problem here. Like, yeah. Demilitarized, yeah, Keck W on that one. Which is a strange place to live. Yeah, I live in a very hazy gray world. It is weird to be me. Not a bad place, just strange. It's like juggling or watchmaking or playing the piano, anything that demands complete concentrated awareness and attention. It feels like cognitive dissonance, only pleasant. It feels like waking up from a compelling and realistic bad dream. It feels like the way you feel when you realize that everything you know is wrong, and a bloody good thing too, because it was painful and stupid and it really screwed you up. Yeah, so this person's happy. They were forced into this rigid way to think about sex, and then once they got out of that, they were like, hey, I'm free. It's nice. But yeah, my haze is not great either. It's like not very clear what to do. Okay, but for the author, living in a question naturally leads to searching for an answer. I can't simply shrug, throw up my hands and say, damned if I know. I have to explore the unknown frontiers, even if I don't bring back any secret treasure. So even if it's incomplete or provisional, I do want to find some sort of definition of what is and isn't sex. Author says, I know when I'm feeling sexual. I'm feeling sexual if my pussy's wet, my nipples are hard, my palms are clammy, my brain is fogged, my skin is tingly and super sensitive, my butt muscles clench, my heartbeat speeds up, I have an orgasm, that's the real giveaway, and so on. But feeling sexual with someone isn't the same as having sex with them. Good Lord, if I called it sex every time I was attracted to someone who returned the favor, I'd be even more bewildered than I am now. Even being sexual with someone isn't the same as having sex with them. I've danced and flirted with too many people, given and received too many sexy, would-be seductive back rubs to believe otherwise. Yeah, so there's going to be a line between, some kind of sexual act and not sex. Author says, I have friends who say if you thought of it as sex when you were doing it, then it was. That's an interesting idea. It certainly helped me construct a coherent sexual history without being a revisionist swine, redefining my past according to current definitions. But it really just begs the question. It's fine to say that sex is whatever I think it is, but then what do I think it is? What if, when I was doing it, I was wondering whether it counted? Yeah, K-Pars, varieties of sex. Yeah, it's like we're getting like the range of sex, and where do you draw the line here? Yeah. And like, this is also an interesting thing. If you thought of it as it, like, so this is a very sort of, perception is the way the world is. Well, it's like, well, for something like this that you might consider to be, there is no objective fact of the matter, then maybe that is what it is. Like, maybe it is something that's purely resides in our belief. Could be. Like, it seems a little bit wrong. Like, it seems like just because you thought it doesn't mean you're right. But like, then again, maybe there is the right sort of mental state and say, well, then I thought it was, and then it was actually. I mean, there's people who can like auto orgasm if they just think about certain things. So it's like, well, maybe for them, the belief is enough. Okay. Perhaps having sex with someone is the conscious, consenting, mutually acknowledged pursuit of shared sexual pleasure. Not a bad definition. If you are turning each other on and you say so and you keep doing it, then it's sex. Okay, but like again, this is a shared intention at this point. So you've got two people with a mutual intention. Again, we should go talk to Prof about this. He works in this area. Because for to be in a band is to emote together, like to have an emotional goal, like a group emotional goal. Like that's what this is, if the acknowledged pursuit of sexual pleasure. Okay. So if you are turning each other on and you say so and you keep doing it, then it's sex. It's broad enough to encompass a lot of sexual behavior beyond genital contact orgasm. It's distinct enough not to include every instance of sexual awareness or arousal, and it contains the elements I feel are vital: acknowledgement, consent, reciprocity, and the pursuit of pleasure. I mean, I know somebody here has the foot rub, like there's the old foot rub discussion from Pulp Fiction. Like, does a foot rub count as sex? Like, this is exactly what's going on right here. But what about the situation where one person consents to sex without really enjoying it? Lots of people, myself included, have had sexual interactions that we didn't find satisfying or didn't really want, and unless they were actually forced on us against our will, I think most of us would classify them as sex. Would still classify them as sex, yeah. So you might have had some bad sex, but you're like, yuck, why? Maybe if both of you or all of you think of it as sex, then it's sex whether you're having fun or not. That clears up the problem of sex that's consented but not wished for or enjoyed. Unfortunately, it begs the question again, only worse. Now you have to mesh different people's vague and inarticulate notions of what is and isn't sex and find the place where they overlap. Too messy. Yeah, so again, this sort of mutual shared thing, like you might be doing it if it's in a band and you're trying to make music together, but like if you don't actually have the point of like any of you knowing what you're doing, then it's like, well, what are you actually doing if that sort of thing? Does looking at a shirtless guy or a woman in bikini sex? Is also another question. Yeah, but you can see where this author is going with this sock now. It's that there's something mutual. So you looking at somebody else does not count as sex. You might be lusting after them, but that's not sex. Okay, author says, I'm having trouble here. Even the conventional standby sex equals intercourse has a serious flaw. It includes rape, which is something I emphatically refuse to accept. As far as I'm concerned, if there's no consent, it ain't sex. But I feel that's about the only place in this whole quagmire where I have a grip. Yes, Vipers, we all did just have sex. The longer I think about the subject, the more questions I come up with. At what point in an encounter does it become sexual? If an interaction that begins non-sexually turns into sex, was it sex all along? What about sex with someone who's asleep? Can you have a situation where one person is having sex and the other isn't? It seems that no matter what definition I come up with, I can think of some real-life experience that calls it into question. Dojo says, I know a woman that thinks that watching porn is cheating, not masturbating, just watching. I have a very different view, but I can't deny that she clearly has a divine belief. Yeah. So again, there's a separation here. Like there's a violation of trust. Now, if like you have a partner that thinks watching porn is a violation of their trust, like they trust that they think in a relationship you don't watch porn, and if you were to do it, that's violating their trust, then like, yeah, they are treating that like cheating. It's like, maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong, but like that is part of that relationship. Sakno says, yeah, but that is under the author's limitations. Like a society could look at it differently, though. I mean, yes, but this is philosophy. This is the author trying to come up with arguments. Whether or not like society has a good opinion on this is a different question. This is this author trying to pin down something philosophically satisfying, or a definition that's like justified in some way. So it's like, of course society will disagree, but like that's the nature of doing philosophy, is that you are trying to come up with something new. Okay, for instance, a couple of years ago, I attended hosted an all-girl sex party. Out of the 12 other women there were only a few with whom I got seriously physically nasty. The rest I kissed or hugged or talked dirty with or just smiled at or watched while they did seriously physically nasty things with each other. If we'd been alone, I'd probably say that what I'd done with most of the women there didn't count as having sex. But the experience, which was hot and sweet and silly and very, very special, had been created by all of us, and although I really got down with only a few, I felt that I'd been sexual with all of the women there. Now, when I meet one of the women from that party, I always ask myself, have we had sex? For instance, when I was first experimenting with sadomasochism, I got together with a really hot woman. We were negotiating about what we were going to do, what would and wouldn't be okay, and she said she wasn't sure she wanted to have sex. Now, we'd been explicitly planning all kinds of fun and games, spanking, bondage, obedience, which I strongly identified as sexual activity. In her mind, though, sex meant direct genital contact, and she didn't necessarily want to do that with me. Playing with her turned out to be a tremendously erotic experience, arousing and stimulating and almost unbearably satisfying. But we spent the whole evening without even touching each other's genitals. And the fact that our definitions were so different made me wonder, what is sex? For instance, I worked for a few months as a nude dancer at a peep show. In case you've never been to a peep show, it works like this. The customer goes into a tiny, dingy black box, kind of a phone booth, puts in quarters, and a metal plate goes up. The customer looks through a window at a little room stage where naked women are dancing. One time a guy came into one of the booths and started watching me and masturbating. I came over and squatted in front of him and started masturbating too, and we grinned at each other and watched each other and masturbated, and we both had a fabulous time. I couldn't believe I was being paid to masturbate. Tough job, but somebody has to do it. This could be straight up illegal depending where you are. Like sex acts on stage are not legal in New York State, so you can get naked, but you can't have sex acts. So I wonder where this person was. Greta needs to calm down, yes. After he left, I thought to myself, did we just have sex? I mean, if it had been someone I knew, if there had been no glass and no quarters, there'd be no question in my mind. Sitting 2 feet apart from someone watching the other masturbate, yep, I'd call that sex, all right. But this was different because it was a stranger, because of the glass and the quarters. Was it still sex? I still don't have an answer. Study questions! Well, that's it for this at the moment. And I mean, maybe we could go over the study questions, but what we do here now is we rate our philosophy. So if you are new here and you have not been here, what we do is we have emotes, and these are Better TTV emotes. So if you have the Better TTV plug installed for your browser, you can see the emotes. But like, what you do is you type in the text. Spelling and capitalization do matter here. What's up, Frank? Harris recommending this to stream is an act of sex with all of us. Yeah, exactly. So if you thought this was fun, gave you fun ideas, Brain Dance, Nog Scream for existential or artistic drama, Nog Aura for Ouroboros deep or ancient ideas, Nog Knife for slicing and dicing arguments, Nog Navel, navel gazing only for academics, Nog Turd for all style no substance, still poop underneath, and Nog Rapes for big claims that shrivel up. You can also use the global vote yay, vote nay, and vote meh, and in general, if it's in the green and on the top, that'll make the score go up. It's in red on the bottom, it'll make the score go down. I have a generalized score, and the vote meh makes everything go towards the middle. So, I mean, I have a soft spot for unusual topics in philosophy. I always do. So this falls under that. So we're going to get a brain dance on this. Put that down. Thank you for the rating. So we got a yay and a brain dance from Aris and K-Pars. You know, this also gets a grapes from me. Motherfucker set us up like they were going to even try to give a definition, and they didn't even, they just hand-waved at some definitions. They're getting a vote yay. Also, this was well written and had some good ideas in it, but, they did also debate us. They were like, are we having sex now or what? And it just ended up with the or what question. We don't know. Grapes or turd to be justified. Yeah, Ivan said nay, and the turd. Yeah, so this is not going to be for everyone. And like I said, I have a very soft spot myself for papers going into new areas of philosophy, broaching topics that you don't see in the canon. And so the topic of trying to define sex, which is a very normal human activity, that you'd be like, well, we should have a good idea about what this is. We've been doing it since the dawn of humanity. We don't have a good topic. Yeah, they did have their cogito rape, not therefore not sex. Yeah. So they had a few negative determinations, which is fine. But like, again, I was hoping for a more positive definition. Saying certain things are ruled out, well, that's fine too. Like they were saying, they did hint at the mutual, there's something mutual about it. Like even in that last example where she was masturbating with someone, but like across like a metal plate, they were still together at the same time doing something mutually. So you have some sort of like sex. At least they're not talking about masturbation. They're talking about, there has to be some sort of joint action there, but the clarification of that was weak. Ivan says, don't analyze words constantly. They're judged with highly complex way of neural criteria as we were talking about one thing. Why not? Ivan, why can't we investigate stuff? Like in philosophy, I don't think we should gatekeep hard topics. Just because it's difficult doesn't mean there aren't smart people out there and maybe they'll say something. You don't have to like what this person said, but I don't like the idea of the gatekeeping of philosophy. Frank says, but is there any reason to agree with rape, therefore not sex? Well, that's their opinion. I don't think any progress was made. It was just word games before the paper and still just word games after the paper. There is work in the negative, being able to like go through some examples carefully and be like, well, this counts, or this doesn't count, and not coming up with a final definition. That happens sometimes. It's not great. That's why this person's getting a grapes out of me. But like, not all philosophy is as successful as other philosophy. Like you want to have positive results, but it doesn't always happen. So it's like, well, was there any benefit in all the negative things that this paper gave to us? I think I think it's a decent discussion paper, It might not hold up in ancient societies that respect only men's consent. Yeah, not at all, but like we're not in those, so we're talking about now. Doku says, was it entertaining and somewhat challenging? Yes. Was it real think error? Not real. I hate trying to rank this type of paper. It's a good preliminary attempt. Like I said before, this is really well written. I think you guys are getting a little fooled by how good a writer this is. This was not as easy as it is getting made out to be. This discussion of mutual interaction is sophisticated. Like Frank, you should know, like this is the shit Prof talks about. Like this is not like that was done well. Like the way they talked about it. Now, was this like this is very pop philosophy, but like this wasn't done badly. Like it really wasn't. It's just hard to say. Ivan says, pick an hour enough criterion, you can probably say something interesting. Again, that's gatekeepy. It's like, you're like, say, stick to your lane. I have a soft spot. Like, there's a difference between me and you. I have a soft spot, as I said before, for people who ask questions about topics that you don't see as much. So it's like, yeah. Frank says, I think it was good reading and fine starter, but didn't teach you anything, make you think of something to yourself. And that's also fine. Like, you can know a topic and not get anything out of a philosophy because, you may already know this shit. Talk to us says, Nog Knife for some good arguments because you gave more an introductory take to the subject of sexuality, but yeah, grapes for the similar reasons as what you explained. I would also say there's a navel gazing because she gave more ideas beginning at the arguments of a larger idea. Yeah. Globus says, sometimes I like thinking of new, and Stockton, I'll fix, like, do you want the Nog Knife and the Nog Grapes? Because, I'll fix that if you don't, though. But, like, if it doesn't show up in chat, like, below, then it didn't get registered. Globus says, sometimes I like new or interesting stuff without a conclusion, sometimes to confront established ideas. Exactly, Globus. Sometimes that's the best you can do at the moment is to point out the problem. And I know this is something you do on your channel. Like, you give Globus a shout out, really. Something Globus does is like, you're discussing topics. We don't always have the answer, but sometimes getting the shape of the problem is worth it. And so it's like, if you want to go talk AI and other smart stuff, you can go hang out at Globus's. Harry says, it's also why I chose it as an intro. Philosophy is often born in places where we think something is obvious, but then we find out we had no fucking clue what we were talking about. Yeah, so that's mainly, this is just a question paper. Like, it's raising the issue here, and that's fair. Are they trying to figure out why to take one definition rather than another? Actually, what's happening here, Chocolate, is they're just trying to ask the question. They're not trying to get to the definition. They're just trying to narrow down what are they supposed to be even asking in this area. And that's kind of the part of the issue. here is that this is why we were a little debated in the like Twitch lingo. You thought you were going to get an answer. What we really did was we got a very sophisticated question. Yes, talking to us, so that would be good. Yep. Oh, if there's intro teaching, then that's not bad. This is allegedly to be a leading edge philosophical investigation, then no. Yeah. So I feel like this is part of a textbook. And it's like, this is like chapter 1. And it's like, this is, I think this is just basically an intro to the sort of question that is important in this area and how you're doing it. She's not even giving a structure of the philosophy. Yeah. But again, I keep saying I have a soft spot, but like sometimes asking the question is the best thing you can do. Like, and it will take a lot more time and effort to actually get any movement on the answer. Yeah. So like, I recognize this as the amalgamation of a lot of thought and like saying, how are we even supposed to approach the problem? See, I just finished up, I just got the first draft of a paper, and I was like, how long have I been working on this? I made the folder 1 year ago. I made it last January, a year ago in January. And if I made the folder on my computer, that means I had notes for months ahead of time before I had enough to actually start writing on the computer. This is going to be a 2-year, to even get a draft took me 2 years. If I look at the stuff I wrote down last year, like a year ago, January, it will look like this paper here. I had good questions I was trying to answer, and I didn't have any results yet. But I had a good question, and that's kind of what this is. It's like, if you're going to do some real philosophy, it's coming, but you need to start at this point. And so, yes, as a teaching thing, this is like getting the people thinking in the right sort of way about the topic. All right. So, if anyone else wants to get their results in, please do it now. You got 60 seconds. Let me just suck. No. We've got a nog knife and a grapes. What did I rate this right? I gave it a yay, a brain dance, and a grapes. I think that's fair. Like, it's not a perfect paper. It is just sort of trying to give a shape to the question. They could have done more to, like, to say something about that. Exactly, Frank. If you're trying to do philosophy, it's coming. Yeah. Like, how would I develop this? I mean, I know a bunch of different theories of metaphysics. I'm going to apply them. There is a whole lot of stuff. Yeah. Okay, I'll get it down. I'll fix it in later. It's talking now. Don't worry about it. It's like we're talking about some sort of human experience here, and okay, that's it. Thank you all. But like, if I was gonna start to define some sort of human experience, don't go with sex. Go with something else. Start off with the easier problem. What is it to, like, for example, example from Eddie Murphy. He started off, he wanted to be a comedian since he was a kid. He was like, what am I going to talk about as a kid? I don't know everyone's experience. He made poop jokes. Poop jokes are universal. Everyone poops. It is also something we do in terms of humans. Like, babies poop, adults poop, people use poop for sex. Like, who the fuck knows? Poop jokes. You might be able to narrow down pooping as a more, the biological aspect of it, the social aspect of it. You'd have to really, you could start breaking things down, like biologically, socially, like interpersonally, like how do we deal with pooping in like society? We have like plumbing and shit, plumbing with the shit. So it's like you could start pulling it apart in a bunch of different directions. So like this sort of things. I think sex needs to be split into 5 words. Frank says, yeah, there's something called open texture in philosophy. Open texture means that a word just has too many different meanings in a society at a time. It's just too textured. And so you need to like split it up to really be clear. And like maybe there's a few different ideas that are just overlapping. So like I know a few people have kind of said things along those lines. So open texture is kind of a technical term that gets used in philosophy to describe these things that are just overly laden with meaning. Douglas says, I've read a lot of papers on sexuality and sex. I don't like that she's defying sex to determine her count. Well, why? Why are you angry about that? I mean, what you just said, that you don't like her original reason for getting into this discussion. Who cares what her reason is? Is what she said smart about this discussion? So the question, it's called the genetic fallacy. Why you got there doesn't always matter. Where you start out in this world doesn't matter as much as where you end up. So if she ended up asking a good question, it's more important than what stupid reason she had in her history that got her there. It's like, what did you do with what you were given? Not like what you were given. Does that matter so much? What the hell are we looking at? Well, we're trying to define sex, Chaos Nick, and we had trouble. This person did not do a great job. She just sort of put the question out there in an interesting way. Frank says, I don't think that's even why she got there, really. I think it's her vehicle to take the reader into the question. I agree. I think this was more of a rhetorical device. I bet it was in the back of her mind, but it worked better as a rhetorical device than being the dorky philosopher. Like, I asked this question and I don't know what it means. I'm going to do some metaphysics now. Why don't you talk about your body count and make a fun story out of that, and then get to ask, well, but then how do we actually do the body count if we don't have a good definition?